We're drifting slowly into the timeline of Elden Ring, a tangled web of golden order and quiet catastrophes that began with a shattered star and a queen who bound the world in law, only to unravel into something of buried gods, broken oaths, and mysteries that no scholar has ever fully closed. Born in the pale light of the Erdtree, where a great gold rune held life and death in careful balance, it grew into a realm of demigods and knights and whispered covenants. But beneath the roots, something older stirred. Truths hidden by the powers that won. Names struck from the record so that the victors might sleep easier. This is the story of how a perfect order was built upon a mountain of secrets, and how those secrets still glimmer in the dark, half-answered, waiting for us to lean close and wonder. Rest now, and let your eyes grow heavy. There is no hurry here. We will not solve these riddles tonight, and we are not meant to. We are only going to hold them gently, one at a time, and turn them over in the quiet, the way you might turn a smooth, cold stone found at the edge of a forgotten sea. Some of what we speak will be written plainly in the world. Some will live only in the faint edges of an item's description, in a line half erased, in a silence where an answer should be. And in those silences we will linger longest, because that is where the lands between keep their deepest dreams. Let us begin, as so many things in this world begin, with a breaking. There was once a great rune, the Elden Ring, the ordering principle of all things, tree by Queen Marika, the Eternal. It was not a crown, not truly, though we imagine it so. It was law made luminous, a lattice of runes that decided what death meant, what strength meant, how a soul might live and how it might pass. And then, in a moment that the world has never stopped grieving, that ring was shattered. Marika herself struck it, or so the fragments tell us, and its shards scattered into the hands of her children, the demigods, who each took a great rune and turned upon one another in the war we call the Shattering. But here is the first of our tender mysteries, the one that colours all the rest. Why did she do it? Why would a queen who had spent an age binding the world in golden order raise her hand and unmake that order in a single blow? The game offers us fragments, and the fragments do not agree. Perhaps it was grief, the grief of a mother whose most beloved son Godwyn had been murdered in a way no god should ever die. Perhaps it was defiance, a refusal to remain the vessel of a will that was never truly her own. Perhaps it was the only rebellion left to a being who had been made into a god against something deeper in herself. We drift past this question without answering it, because the beauty of it is that it cannot be answered, only felt, and we feel it best in the dark. Above the Erdtree, beyond the gold, there is said to be an outer god called the Greater Will. It is the power that sent down the Elden Ring in the shape of a golden star long ago, and installed its order upon the lands between. We speak its name often, and yet we have never seen its face, never heard its voice, never found a single carving that shows us its true form. It rules, if it rules at all, through silence and through servants, and that is the mystery that keeps scholars awake in the quiet hours. For at some point, the Greater Will seems to have simply stopped answering. Its emissaries, the Two Fingers, still tremble and gesture, still relay commands, but there is a growing dread woven through the world that no one is truly listening on the other end. Perhaps the Greater Will abandoned the lands between after the Shattering, disgusted or bored or defeated. Perhaps it never spoke directly at all, and the Fingers only ever pantomimed a wisdom they invented. We cannot know whether we live under the gaze of a distant god or under the empty chair where a god used to sit, and the not knowing is its own kind of cold. Let us stay a moment longer with those trembling messengers, the Two Fingers, pale and swollen and wrapped in cloth, gesturing endlessly in the dark of the Round Table hold. They are meant to be the mouth of the Greater Will, translating its distant intentions into commands that mortals can follow. Finger readers kneel before them and interpret their movements the way a priest reads the folds of a sacred cloth. but something has gone wrong with them, and no one will say so plainly. Their fingers curl and twitch, and the reader insists all is well, insists the guidance still flows, yet a careful listener hears the uncertainty beneath her reassurance. Perhaps the fingers no longer receive anything at all. Perhaps they have been relaying static for an age, and every quest undertaken in the name of the greater will has been undertaken in the name of a signal long since lost. There is a horror in loyal service to an authority that may already be dead, and the lands between is full of such loyalty, kneeling in the gloom, waiting for a word that may never come again. Now we come to a figure who haunts the edges of the record like smoke that will not settle. The gloam-eyed queen. She appears in only a scattering of item descriptions, and yet she looms enormous over the deep history of the world, because she carried something the Golden Order feared above all else. She wielded a rune of death, or the destined death itself, the very principle of true ending that Marika had torn from the Elden Ring and sealed away. Who was she? The whispers cannot agree, and the game never shows us her face. Some believe she was the founder of the Godskin faith, the Black Flame assassins who worshipped death as a gift rather than a curse. Some go further and wonder whether she and Marika were one and the same, or two aspects of a single divided soul, one bearing the gold and one bearing the gloam. Perhaps she was defeated and struck from the record so completely that only her weapon remains to prove she ever lived. We drift past her without ever seeing her clearly, and perhaps that is exactly how the victors wanted her remembered, as a shadow at the edge of a page, a queen of the dusk whose true name the Erdtree burned away. Let us hold the rune of death itself gently, the way one might hold something that should never be held. In the beginning, so the fragments say, death was woven into the Elden Ring like every other law, and things could end truly and completely and pass beyond return. But Marika removed the rune of death from the ordering of the world and gave it into the keeping of Maliketh, her shadow-bound beast, who carried it sealed within his own body so that none could ever use it. And here the mystery deepens into dread. For if true death was removed from the world, then what did dying even mean in the lands between afterward? The dead did not rest. They lingered, they rotted without ending. They were bound and reborn, and bound again in the grace of the Erdtree. Perhaps Marika believed she was granting her people a mercy, an escape from oblivion, an eternity in the gold. Or perhaps she was building a prison, a world where nothing could ever truly be free, because nothing could ever truly end. When the rune of death was finally loosed, and Godwyn died a death that should have been impossible, the whole careful lie began to come apart, and we are still, even now, watching it unravel. Consider Godwyn, first among Marika's children, the Golden Prince beloved by knights and dragons alike, the one who made peace with the ancient dragons and earned their eternal loyalty. He was, by every account, gentle and radiant and worthy, the son who might have inherited everything. And he was the first to die in the night of the Black Knives, slain by blades that carried a stolen fragment of the rune of death. But his death was strange, and its strangeness is one of the great riddles of the world. For Godwyn did not die cleanly. His soul perished while his body lived on, and this half-death, this death of the spirit without the death of the flesh, sent something monstrous spreading through the roots of the Erdtree itself. We call it the death root, or the spread of those who live in death, a slow contagion of a wrong kind of undeath rippling out from Godwyn's corrupted corpse far below Stormvale. Perhaps his death was a mistake, a weapon used imperfectly. Or perhaps it was aimed with terrible precision, meant to poison the tree from its roots up. We do not know who truly guided the knife, and we will come to that shadow soon. Here is a thread that runs through the whole tapestry, dark and deliberate. On the night that Godwyn's soul was slain, another death occurred, quieter and stranger. Ranni, daughter of Rennala and Radagon, a princess and an Empyrean marked as a candidate to become the next god, chose that same night to kill her own body. She had the Black Knife assassin strike at Godwyn's immortal soul and at her own mortal flesh in the same terrible hour. Why would she do such a thing? This is the mystery at the heart of Ranni's whole quiet rebellion. She was Empyrean, chosen by the Two Fingers, groomed to be bound forever to the will of an outer god she had come to distrust and to hate. By killing her body while preserving her soul, she believed she could slip free of that binding, escape the greater will's leash, and one day forge a different order entirely, one ruled from a great and cold distance where no god could reach into the hearts of the living. Perhaps her rebellion was wisdom, perhaps it was arrogance dressed as mercy. Either way, Godwyn was caught in it, and his ruined soul became the price of her freedom, a price she carries in silence. The blades themselves are a mystery worth dwelling on. The Black Knife assassins struck from shadow, cloaked in cloth that stole the light, and their daggers bore a fragment of destined death. A shard of the very rune Malekith was meant to keep sealed away forever. But how did a mortal assassin come to carry a splinter of true death when that power was locked inside a god's own flesh, guarded beyond the reach of any hand? Someone stole it first. Someone reached into the sealed thing and drew out a sliver of ending and pressed it into the steel of ordinary knives. The fragments hint that this theft was aided from within, that the assassins were once handmaidens of Marika herself, and that the shard was given, not taken by force. Perhaps Marika allowed it. Perhaps some part of the queen wished her golden son dead, or wished the whole order weakened and turned a blind eye to the theft. The idea that the mother of the demigods may have been complicit in the murder that broke the world is one of those thoughts we can only hold in the dark, turning it slowly, never setting it down. Now we approach perhaps the strangest revelation the world offers, and even revealed, it remains a mystery. Queen Marika, the Eternal, and the red-haired champion Radagon are the same being. One body, two souls, or one soul in two shapes, bound together and yet at war. When at last we stand before the final throne, we see it plainly, Radagon and Marika sharing a single form, one facing forward and one behind. But knowing that they are one only sharpens the questions. Radagon was Marika's consort, her husband, and also herself. He served the Golden Order with fervor, striving to repair the Elden Ring, even as Marika shattered it. So within a single divided being, there raged a civil war of purpose, one hand breaking what the other hand desperately tried to mend. Perhaps Radagon was the part of Marika that still loved the greater will, and Marika the part that had come to despise it. Perhaps the god was never one mind at all, but a fracture pretending to be a crown. We drift past this divided sovereign in wonder, unsure whether to grieve the queen, the consort, or the war between them that no one could ever win. In the drowned academy of Raya Lucaria, there sits a broken queen, Renala of the full moon, cradling something to her chest with the tenderness of a mother who has lost everything. She rocks and murmurs and clutches a great glowing egg, and around her the scholars have become undying husks who reset the deaths of the living over and over. She was once wed to Radagon and bore him 3 children before he abandoned her for Marika and left her hollow. What is the egg? That is the soft riddle we hold here. Some believe it is a symbol of her longing to remake her children, to give birth again to the family that Radagon's leaving destroyed. Some believe her power over rebirth, the very reason we can rebuild ourselves in her chamber, flows from whatever slumbers within that shell. Perhaps the egg is only grief given a shape to hold, the way a broken heart will cling to any small warm thing. She is not truly our enemy, this queen of the moon, only a woman undone by abandonment, rocking an egg that may never hatch in a library where the water never stops rising. Beneath the lands between, far below the shining order, there burns a maddening light, the flame of frenzy, tended by the 3 fingers, in a hidden place, reached only through despair. Where the 2 fingers serve the greater will and its order of life, the 3 fingers serve a very different outer god, the frenzied flame, whose desire is to gather all life and all pain and all despair back into a single burning point and end the endless suffering of existence by ending existence itself. The schism between them is one of the world's deepest wounds. Two hands of two gods, gesturing opposite commands from opposite depths, and the whole surface world caught between order and oblivion. What broke them apart? Why does one hold up two fingers and the other three? Perhaps they were once a single hand, and the schism split it. Perhaps the frenzied flame was always down there, a buried rage against a world where death was stolen and nothing could rest, offering the only true ending left, the ending of everything. We hold this fire at a careful distance, for even to look upon it too long is to feel its whisper, that peace might be found only in the dark that swallows all. There is a companion who walks with us through much of this journey, a maiden with a scar across one closed eye, who offers to guide us and to be our finger maiden when the two fingers will not accept us. Her name is Melina, and she speaks of a purpose given to her at the foot of the Erdtree, a duty she does not fully understand, a memory of a mother she cannot place. Who is she? The world will not tell us plainly, and so we wonder. She calls herself perhaps a daughter of Marika, born within the Erdtree and burdened with a task before she ever drew breath. Her single visible eye and her hidden one echo the divided gods, the gold and the gloam. Some believe she is the sister of Rani, or a kindled spirit meant always to become fire. For when the way forward is blocked by the thorns of the Erdtree, it is Melina who offers to give herself to the flame, to become the kindling that burns the sacred tree away. She was made, perhaps, to be sacrificed, and she seems to know it, and she walks with us anyway, gentle and sorrowful, toward the fire she was born to feed. Let us stay with Melina a breath longer, because her fate branches at the darkest crossroad in the world. If we, the tarnished she guides, descend into the depths and take the frenzied flame into ourselves, we betray her purpose entirely, and she makes a vow, cold and grieving, to one day put us to death, to stop the flame we now carry, and here is the tender ache of it. Melina exists to burn, whether she burns as our willing sacrifice at the Erdtree, or steels herself to become our executioner when we choose oblivion, her story is written in fire from the start. Perhaps she is the destined death given a kindly face. Perhaps she is Marika's mercy, or Marika's regret, walking the roads in a small cloak, trying to steer the last champion toward an ending that will not damn the world. We do not know if she truly dies when she gives herself to the flame, or whether some ember of her endures. We only know that she trusted us, and that our choices decide whether that trust becomes a gift or a grief. Far below the surface, deeper than the roots, there are cities of eternal night, Nokron and Noxtella, and the sunless capital of the eternal city, where a false starry sky glimmers on stone ceilings, and the streets are silver and cold. Here dwelt the Nox, a people who were cast down long ago, banished beneath the earth for some ancient transgression against the greater will. What did they do to earn such a burial? The fragments say they sought to forge a new order, a lord of night, a god of their own making, to replace the golden tyranny above. For this ambition they were struck down, their sky made false, their cities sealed in perpetual dark, and yet they never truly surrendered. They waited, and they wove their patience into Rani's cause, for her age of stars is the very night they longed for, an order ruled from cold distance by a moon rather than a sun. Perhaps the Nox were villains, perhaps they were only the first to see the cruelty of the gold, and to dream of something gentler and further away. Their silver bells still ring faintly in the deep, a lullaby for a rebellion that took an age to bloom. Among the sunless streets of the eternal cities crawl the finger creepers, monstrous things made of pale grasping hands, and their presence there is a riddle unto itself. Why should the servants and guardians of a people who defied the fingers be shaped like fingers themselves, scuttling through the dark on jointed digits? Perhaps it is a curse, a punishment fitted to the crime, the Nox forced to live forever among the shape of the very authority they rejected. Perhaps the hands are a warning, a mockery, a reminder pressed into their eternal night that the reach of the gods extends even to the places where their light does not. There is something deeply unsettling in a hand that walks, a hand without a body, grasping at nothing in the everlasting dusk. We pass through these silver ruins quietly, careful not to wake whatever memory still sleeps in the pale crawling things, and we wonder what the Nox truly paid, and to whom, for the dream of a night without gods. In a forgotten ruin at the edge of time, wreathed in a storm that does not move, there sleeps a dragon of impossible age, Dragon Lord Placidusax, who once ruled the lands between, long before the Erdtree, long before Marika, in an age we can scarcely imagine. He was Elden Lord in that vanished era, consort and champion to a god of his own, in the time when dragons reigned and lightning was worship. And here is a mystery that opens onto the abyss. Placidusax speaks, dreaming of his god, and asks where his god has gone. His god is missing. An outer god that ruled before the greater will simply vanished, leaving its ancient champion to slumber forever in a pocket of stopped time, waiting for a return that will never come. What happened to that older god? Did the greater will destroy it, cast it out, take its place? Was there a war of gods before all our histories, a shattering before the shattering? We stand in that unmoving storm and feel how thin our own age is, how many orders have risen and fallen, and how even a god may go missing and leave nothing behind but a grieving dragon and a question no one can answer. Before the gold, the dragons ruled, vast and ancient and clad in scales that turned aside all steel, and lightning was their breath and their prayer. When the Golden Order rose, it did not simply conquer them. Godwyn the Golden made peace with the dragons, and in that peace something was exchanged, a communion, a mingling of the old power and the new. But the deeper question sleeps beneath the Erdtree itself. There are hints, faint and troubling, that the Erdtree was not always there, that it grew over an older thing, that beneath its roots lies a great dragon or the corpse of an older age, paved over by the gold as the victors pave over the vanquished. The crucible, the primordial life from which all things once churned together, dragon and beast and man and tree all tangled as one, was the world's first form, and the Erdtree is perhaps only its refinement, its taming, its cage. Perhaps the Golden Order is a beautiful lie laid gently over something wild and monstrous and true, and the dragons remember, and their memory is why they sleep so uneasily in the storm. Let us hold the crucible tenderly, for it is the world's beginning and the Golden Order's shame. In the earliest age, life did not come in tidy, separate shapes. It churned together in a single primordial fire, and from that churning came all things mixed, horns and wings and roots and scales and flesh all as one, the crucible of undivided life. The oldest nights and the oldest incantations still carry its power, the horns, the tails, the wings that sprout from prayer. Why did the Golden Order despise it so? As the Erdtree refined the world, it came to see the crucible as impurity, as a shameful and beastly origin to be pruned away, and those who carried its aspects, horns or scales, were driven to the margins as omens and monsters. Perhaps the Golden Order was ashamed of where it came from, the way a proud house buries the memory of its humble founding. Perhaps the crucible is simply the truth of life, wild and undivided, and the gold is only a fearful trimming of that truth into something that can be ruled. We drift past its ancient churning and wonder whether the omens the world casts out are not curses at all, but simply memories of when the world was whole. There is an outer god who has no shape at all, worshipped in blood, called the Formless Mother, and she is the patron of the blood cults and of the Lord of Blood, Mog, whose story drips through the world in crimson. She grants power to those who wound themselves and others, who spill blood as ritual, who love in the terrible way that spilling blood can be called love. Who is she? Even her worshippers cannot describe her, for she has no form, only a presence felt in shed blood and in the ache of a wound. Some wonder whether she is a thing of the crucible, or older still, a hunger that predates every order. Morg gave her his devotion and his flesh, and dreamed of raising his cursed brother Miquella into a god at his side, of founding a dynasty of blood beneath the earth. Perhaps the formless mother is loneliness given a cult. Perhaps she is the raw pain of existence that the gold tried to hide, welling up wherever a body is opened. We hold this shapeless mother at arm's length, for she promises intimacy through injury, and there is a sorrow in her worship, a search for a mother's love in the one thing that cannot love back. Morg, the Lord of Blood, festering in the sunless depths, committed the strangest of thefts. He stole away the sleeping form of Miquella, the most beloved and most tragic of the demigods, and he cradled him in a bloody cocoon, whispering of a dynasty they would rule together, a devotion that Miquella never asked for and could not consent to. And here the mystery coils tight. Miquella is Empyrean, like Rani, like Melania his twin, cursed to remain forever a child in body, though his mind and his power grew vast. He tried to escape that curse by binding his own soul away, cocooning himself within the sacred tree, shedding his flesh to become something greater. But Mo took the cocoon, and what grew inside it, and where Miquella truly went, and whether he went willingly or was torn from his path, are questions that trail off into blood and shadow. Perhaps Miquella orchestrated even his own abduction, planting himself where he needed to be. Perhaps he was simply a sleeping child, stolen by a lonely monster. We do not fully know, and in the space between knowing, the most gentle of gods drifts, wrapped in another's dream. Let us stay with Miquella, for of all the demigods, he is the one whose ambition unsettles us most, precisely because it wore the face of kindness. He was the most beloved of Marika's children, radiant and compassionate, and he possessed a power gentle and terrible at once, the power to bind others to him with an unbreakable love, a charm woven so deep that even gods could not resist it. He built a great tree of his own, the Haligtree, as a sanctuary for the outcast and the afflicted, for those the Golden Order had cast aside, and he gathered the misbegotten and the despised beneath its branches and promised them a kinder world. But beneath that tenderness lay a design so vast it makes the heart go still. Miquella sought to become a god, and to do so he understood he would have to abandon things, to shed them one by one, to cast away his flesh, his fear, perhaps even his love, until only a pure and perfect divinity remained. There is a place in the world where he is said to have discarded his very body, climbing toward godhood by leaving his humanity behind on the road like garments shed in the cold. And here we must wander gently in the dark. A god who binds all others to him with irresistible love, who unmakes their will and calls it compassion. Is that salvation, or is it the softest tyranny ever dreamed? Perhaps Miquella meant only mercy. Perhaps the kindest of all the demigods would have made the most complete of all the prisons, a world where none could ever disagree with their beloved lord, because none could ever want to. We drift past his shining ambition and feel the chill beneath the warmth, and we do not know whether to mourn him or to be grateful he never finished. Miquella had a twin, and her name is a wound that never closed. Melania, blade of Miquella, the greatest warrior the lands between ever produced, undefeated in every duel save one, and cursed from birth with the scarlet rot, a decaying divinity that festered in her flesh even as her brother stayed forever young. The two of them, twin Empyreans, each carried an affliction that was also a power, his eternal childhood and her eternal rot, two halves of a cursed inheritance from the parents who made them. Melania's mystery is the mystery of the rot itself. She is bound to an outer god, the god of rot, a power of decay and rebirth that lives within her and hungers to bloom. Twice in her life she loosed that power fully, and twice a great scarlet flower burst from her, spreading rot across whole regions, drowning the once golden capital of the Haligtree's rival lands in crimson bloom. What is the rot truly? Is it only a disease, or is it a kind of life the Golden Order refuses to acknowledge, a cycle of death-feeding growth that the Erdtree, in its terror of true ending, could never tolerate? Perhaps the scarlet rot is the natural death the world was denied when Marika stole the rune of death, welling up in a twisted form because it was given no honest one. Malenia held it back with all her will for a lifetime, this bloom that wished to consume everything, and we cannot know whether her final blossoming was defeat or surrender, or the terrible flowering she was always destined to become. Deep in a rotting swamp beneath the world, at the source of the Scarlet Plague, there festers something ancient, the seat of the god of rot itself, a divinity of decay worshipped by the pariahs and the afflicted, who found in rot a strange and terrible dignity. To them, rot was not merely sickness, it was transformation, the breaking down of the old so the new might grow, a cycle the Golden Order had frozen and forbidden. Where did this god come from, and why does it dwell so far below? The fragments are thin here, thinner than almost anywhere, and the silence is heavy. Perhaps the god of rot is a fragment of the primordial crucible, the churning life that includes decay as surely as it includes growth, cast down and buried like so much else the gold found shameful. Perhaps it is an outer god like the others, drifting in from beyond, finding purchase in the wounds of the world. The pariahs who worshipped it believed decay was holy, that to rot was to return, that the body dissolving into bloom was not an ending but a passage. We hold this idea softly in the dark, this notion that rot might be a kind of mercy in a world where nothing was allowed to end, and we wonder whether the afflicted, whom everyone pitied, understood something about death that the shining gods had forgotten. Not every mystery is cosmic. Some are small and sorrowful and human, and Godric's is one of these. Godric the Grafted, sneered at as the lowliest of the demigods, clung to a fortress at the edge of the storm and stitched to the limbs of the fallen onto his own body, arms upon arms, a grotesque tapestry of borrowed strength grafted onto a frame that the world had deemed unworthy. We are meant, perhaps, to find him pathetic, and we do, but beneath the pity there is a question that lingers. Why grafting? The technique is ancient and cruel, and it echoes the crucible, that primordial mixing of forms, though twisted into desperation. Godric believed that if he could gather enough strength, enough limbs, enough lineage grafted onto himself, he might prove his worth to the Erdtree that had all but forgotten him. His last prayer, muttered as he dies, begs an ancestor for forgiveness, promises he will be worthy. There is something unbearably tender in it. This cruel and ridiculous lord, terrified of being nothing, sowing dead soldiers to his own flesh in the hope that borrowed greatness might become his own. Perhaps grafting is only the crucible remembered wrongly, the impulse to become whole through mixture, curdled into the impulse to become strong through theft. We leave him at the storm's edge, muttering his apology to the dark, and we find we cannot quite hate him. Beneath a mountain of volcanic fire, a demigod named Rykard chose a path so heretical it curdles the blood. He wed himself to a great serpent, the god-devouring serpent, and was swallowed into it, and together they became a single blasphemous being whose ambition was to devour the gods themselves, to consume divinity until nothing was left to rule over anyone. Rykard's heresy is a mystery of motive as much as method. He gathered a cult of nobles and champions, lured them into the serpent's maw, fed them all to the growing god within the mountain, promising a world without the tyranny of the Erdtree. Was he a monster or a revolutionary who understood that no reform could ever be enough while gods still existed to be obeyed? His creed, that all who oppose the divine order should be devoured and made part of a new and rising power, is horrifying, and yet it grows from a genuine wound, the recognition that the Golden Order was built on cruelty and could not simply be asked politely to change. Perhaps Rykard glimpsed the same rot at the heart of the world that Ranni glimpsed, and where she chose a cold and distant night, he chose a hot and hungry devouring. We pass through his burning halls and wonder how many of the world's monsters began as people who simply could no longer bear the lie. Return with me once more to Mog, deep in his sunless palace of blood, for his dream deserves a fuller mourning than we gave it. Mog was born cursed, an omen marked by the formless mother's blood cast into the depths and named accursed for the crime of his own birth. And down there in the dark, denied the light of the Erd Tree, he did not simply rage. He built. He raised a whole palace, a whole faith, a whole would-be dynasty in the blood-soaked deep. And he set his heart upon a single impossible love, the raising of Miquella into a god who would rule beside him. The mystery here is the mystery of a love that no one wanted. Mog's devotion to Miquella was total and unasked for, a lonely creature's dream of being needed by the most beloved being in the world. He nurtured the stolen cocoon, whispered to it, offered it his blood and his kingdom, waiting for the day his beloved would wake and crown their dynasty in crimson. Perhaps Mo was charmed, ensnared by Miquella's irresistible bewitchment even from within the cocoon, made to love against his will, or perhaps his devotion was his own, the genuine longing of a rejected soul for a family and a purpose, however monstrous the shape it took. We stand in his crimson halls and feel the terrible loneliness of the accursed, dreaming in the dark of a love that would have devoured him even if it ever woke. Far in the frozen north, at the end of a treacherous road, there rises a second great tree, silver and sorrowful, the Haligtree that Miquella grew as a refuge for all the world had thrown away. The misbegotten, the omens, the afflicted, the horned and the scaled, and the rotting, all those the Golden Order named impurity, Miquella gathered them here and promised them a home where they would not be despised. And here is a soft and aching question. Did Miquella truly love the outcast, or did he merely need them? He built his sanctuary, and he charmed its defenders into undying loyalty, and he set his sister Melania to guard it while he pursued his climb toward godhood elsewhere. When his ambitions called him away, the Haligtree became a fortress of the abandoned, defending the dream of a lord who had left them behind. Perhaps the promise was sincere and only interrupted. Perhaps every utopia is built on the labor and devotion of those who will never quite be allowed inside it. The Haligtree stands frozen and besieged, its silver branches drooping under snow, its people waiting for a savior who cocooned himself and vanished, and we wonder whether the kindest dream in the lands between was also, in the end, another abandonment dressed in silver light. At the round table hold, there sits a quiet woman named Fia, who offers a strange and mournful comfort to hold the tarnished to her breast in an embrace of death, granting a curse disguised as tenderness. She is a deathbed companion, a keeper of a forbidden love, and her heart belongs to a corpse, to the ruined, half-dead body of Godwyn far below the world. Fia's mystery is a mystery of purpose braided with grief. She seeks to gather a cursed rune, the mending rune of the Death Prince, and to lie with Godwyn's death root-spreading corpse in a final embrace, uniting his slain soul with his living body so that a new kind of order might be born, an order that makes room for death and for those who live in death, the very souls the Golden Order damns. Is she a heretic spreading corruption, or a mourner trying to grant the dead the rest they were denied? Perhaps her forbidden love is the truest tenderness in all the world, a refusal to let the murdered prince rot forgotten beneath the tree that failed him. We rest a moment in her cold embrace and feel how thin the line is between corruption and compassion, between a curse and a kindness offered to the unmourned dead. From Godwyn's corrupted corpse, far beneath Stormvale, a contagion crept outward through the roots, and where it touched, the dead ceased to rest and rose again in a wrongness the Golden Order calls those who live in death. They are not the honoured dead of the Erd Tree, bound in grace to be reborn. They are something the tree cannot claim, a life in death that leaked into the world when Godwyn died his impossible death. Why does the Golden Order fear them so completely? The Erd Tree hunts them, purges them, sends the Deathbirds and the Black Flame Apostles to burn them from existence. Perhaps it is because they prove the lie. If the dead can live in a way the tree does not control, then the tree's monopoly on death and rebirth is broken, and the whole Golden Order rests on that monopoly. Those who live in death are the crack in the perfect vessel, the leak in the sealed prison of endless life. Perhaps they are also a mercy, a return of true death's shadow to a world starved of endings. We move quietly among these restless dead and wonder whether they are a plague or simply what death looks like when it has been stolen, denied, and finally forced its way back into a world that forgot how to let anything go. Clad in gleaming armor of the Golden Order, there walks a grim knight called D, Hunter of the Dead, sworn to purge those who live in death wherever they fester, a zealot of destined death who believes the restless dead must be returned to true oblivion. He carries a black flame incantation and a righteous certainty, and he despises fear and all she stands for. D's story is small and bitter and human, and it hides a knife. He has a twin brother, another D, and the tale of what passes between them, of betrayal and stolen armor and a murder in the dark, is one of the world's quiet tragedies, easy to miss, heavy to carry once found. The mystery is one of allegiance and its cost. D serves a faith of true death in a world that stole death away, and his devotion is so absolute that it blinds him, makes him hard, makes him hated even by those he might have understood. Perhaps his hunt is holy. Perhaps it is only cruelty given a creed. When his armor is passed to his brother and turned to darker ends, we feel the whole sorrow of a cause that consumes its faithful and leaves them betrayed by their own. We walk on past the Hunter of the Dead and wonder whether any of these zealots, gold or gloam, ever found the peace they killed and died to bring about. In a town shrouded in perpetual haze, Celia, town of sorcery, there lingers the memory of the Black Knife assassins and a deeper root of the world's oldest murder. Here, the threads of stealth and starlight and death tangle together, for the assassins who slew Godwin's soul were bound up with the sorceress and the Nightborn, with those who studied the stars and the cold spaces between them. The mystery that gathers here is the mystery of how death magic and star magic and assassination all braided into a single conspiracy on the night of the Black Knives. Rani drew upon the Nox, upon the assassins, upon the whole underworld of those cast down and those who studied the dark, to strike her twin blow at Godwin and at her own flesh. Celia's hazes hide the residue of that plot, the sorcerers who lent their craft, the assassins who lent their blades. Perhaps the whole night was a convergence of every faction the Golden Order had wounded, all reaching at once for the wound in the world's law. We drift through the haze and feel how the great crimes of history are never the work of one hand, but of many hands in the dark, each with its own grief, all closing at once around the throat of a golden prince who never saw them coming. Let us begin where all order begins, not with a crown, but with a fist, for before there was ever an Elden Lord, there was only a man named Huaralu, chieftain of a wandering people, a warrior of the Badlands whose name meant nothing to the gods and everything to those who followed him. We drift now toward him slowly, past the golden pretensions of Lanedell, past the tapestries and the trumpets, and we find him waiting there in the shadow of the tree, an old lion who was crowned and then discarded, and who has never once in all the ages of his exile stopped being a warrior at heart. Perhaps this is the first mystery, the quiet one beneath the loud one, that Godfrey was never truly a lord at all, only a conqueror asked to wear the shape of one. He came to the lands between as Marika's consort, her chosen champion, and with the beast, Sirosh, riding upon his back, he waged the wars that broke the demigods, and the giants and the dragons, and he did all of it, we are told, in the name of an order he may never have understood. He was the sword, and Marika was the will, and between them the Golden Order was carved into the flesh of the world. And then, when there were no enemies left to conquer, he was cast out. Consider the cruelty of it gently, the way one turns a cold stone in the palm, For a warrior whose only purpose is war is a warrior who must be exiled the moment the war is won. Marika stripped him of his grace, and he wept, or so the smallest fragments suggest, tears not of a lord losing his throne, but of a purpose losing its reason. And he crossed the fog to find death and honor in distant lands, gathering the strength that only defeat can teach. When at last we meet him again, at the very foot of the Erdtree, he does something no god ever did for us. He casts the beast Serosh from his back, he sheds the borrowed civility, and he speaks his true name into the ruined air, Huara-Lu, warrior, and the ground itself seems to remember what he once was. There is no restraint left in him then, only the old joy of the fight, the pure and terrible gladness of a man who has waited an entire age to be himself again. So we hold him here in the dark, this first lord who was last a man, and we wonder, without needing an answer, whether the crown was ever his triumph or only his cage. Perhaps every order needs a warrior it can use and then forget. Perhaps the fist that builds the throne can never be permitted to sit upon it. And perhaps somewhere beneath the golden law, Huara-Lu always knew that he would end as he began, nameless to the gods, alone with the fight, faithful only to the wild and honest thing inside him that no crown could ever tame. Turn with me now to the creature we so easily overlook, the great furred beast that rode upon Godfrey's shoulders like a burden of penance, Serosh, the beast regent, whose name is spoken only in whispers and whose purpose is written nowhere in full. We saw him and thought him ornament, a lion's skin, a trophy of the hunt, and yet the deeper we drift, the more we suspect that Serosh was no decoration at all, but a leash, and that the thing he restrained was Godfrey himself. For consider what the lore leaves half buried, that Serosh was said to suppress the Lord's lust for battle, to temper the killing joy that lived in Huara-Lu, to make of a wild chieftain a dignified consort fit to stand beside a god. The beast did not ride him for glory. The beast rode him to hold him back, a living chain of fur and quiet menace, whispering restraint into the ear of a man whose truest nature was violence. And so the very image we take for savagery was in truth an image of savagery bound. Perhaps this is why the moment of his casting off strikes so deep. When Godfrey reaches back and hurls Serosh from his shoulders, when the beast tumbles away and the old warrior rises to his full and unrestrained height. We are not watching a lord gain a weapon, we are watching a lord lose his last governor. The leash is broken, the temperance is gone. What remains is Huara-Lu entire, undivided, at last permitted the fury that a whole age of order had asked him to swallow. And here the mystery folds inward upon itself, for who set Serosh upon him, and why? Was it mercy, a way to let a warrior live in a world that had no more war for him? Was it Marika's design, a means of keeping her sword sheathed until the day she needed it drawn? Or was Serosh something older and stranger, a beast regent with purposes of his own, a fragment of some outer will that understood how dangerous and unbound Godfrey might be to the delicate architecture of the Golden Order? The fragments do not say. They only hint, and hinting they deepen. So we hold the beast gently in our thoughts as sleep draws near, this quiet passenger who spent an age holding a lion by the throat. There is something almost tender in it, and something terrible, the notion that even the mightiest are given keepers, that even the First Lord was a thing to be managed, and that beneath every dignified surface there may be a fury someone has decided must never wake. We drift, and we wonder what leashes we ourselves might carry, unseen, and what we might become should they ever, in the last hour, be cast away. Come now beneath the roots, where the light grows thin and the water runs black, for here waits one of the most sorrowful souls in all the lands between, a king who guarded a city that would never call him king, a son who defended a mother who had discarded him, a creature who wore two names because his true one filled him with shame. He is Morgott, and he is Margit, and he is both, and the space between those names is a wound that never healed. We meet him first as Margit, the fell Omen, a shrouded figure of golden light who bars our path with sword and cane and cryptic pity, calling us foul tarnished, warning us back, fighting not with hatred but with a strange weary sorrow. And only later do we learn the truth that Margit was never a separate being, only a projection, a mask spun from magic and from anguish, a way for Morgott to fight us at a distance so that we might never look upon what he truly was. Even in battle he could not bear to be seen, for beneath the mask he is an Omen, born with horns and cursed flesh, one of the shunned children hidden away beneath Lendel in the sunless dark. And this, we begin to understand, is the shame he carries. The name Margit is drawn, some say, from an old word for a boundary or a foul thing, a name to hide behind, while Morgott is the name of the Omen he cannot escape. Two names for one grief, one worn toward the world and one worn towards the self, and between them a lifetime spent trying not to be what he was born as. And yet, and here the sorrow turns to something almost unbearable. This shunned and hidden creature became the last true defender of the very city that buried him. While the demigods warred and abandoned the capital, while the golden lineage scattered into ambition and madness, it was Morgott, the Omen, the discarded one, who sat the throne no one else would guard, who called the Erdtree his and swore to protect it, though it had never once loved him. He is loyal to a nation that spat upon him, faithful to a family that hid him in the dark. So let us hold Morgott gently as we sink towards sleep, this king of two names and no belonging, and let us not resolve his sorrow, but simply sit beside it. Perhaps the mask of Margit was cowardice, perhaps it was mercy, sparing us and himself the sight of his cursed form. Perhaps a soul so long taught to hate its own body learns to fight only from behind another face. We do not know. We only know that when he falls at last, he dies still guarding the tree, still faithful, still ashamed, and still, beneath every name, achingly alone. Let us linger with Morgott a while longer, for his is a grief that deserves more than a single passing, and let us turn our slow attention to the strangest and most heartbreaking thing about him, not that he was cursed, but that he loved. He loved the Erdtree, he loved the Golden Order, he loved the very city and the very faith that had named his kind an abomination and locked them beneath the streets, and this love, unreturned and undeserved, is perhaps the deepest mystery of his ruined heart. Consider the shape of his devotion. Morgott was born an Omen, and the Golden Order teaches that the Omen are impure, their horns a sign of a curse to be cut away, their bodies a shame to be hidden in the shunning grounds below Lendel. He grew in darkness, among the forgotten, in the company of filth and neglect. By every measure, the world had given him cause to hate the tree and everything that grew in its light. And instead, against all reason, he made himself its sword. When we climb toward the capital and he rises to meet us as himself at last, his words are not the words of a bitter creature, but of a wounded believer. No different from all the rest, he says. We who seek to defile the Erdtree, and there is fury in him, yes, but the fury is defensive, protective, the rage of one guarding a beloved thing from desecration. He calls the Erdtree his own. He, the shunned Omen, claims kinship with the very order that shunned him, and he means it with his whole broken soul. Perhaps this is the cruelest curse of all, deeper than the horns, that Morgott could not stop loving what despised him. Perhaps he believed that by defending the tree so fiercely, he might at last prove himself worthy of the light that was denied him at birth. Perhaps his loyalty was a lifelong plea, unspoken and unanswered, a silent asking, "Look, I am faithful. Look how I guard you. Will you not now call me your son?" Or perhaps it was simpler and sadder still, that a soul given nothing to love will love whatever is nearest, even the hand that struck it. So we hold this final image as sleep comes for us, the Omen king upon the throne of a nation that hid him, dying in defense of a tree that never once turned its golden face toward him with anything but shame. There is no resolution here, only the ache of misplaced devotion, only the quiet horror of a love that outlives every reason to feel it. And in the dark behind our eyes we may wonder without answer how many faithful hearts have spent themselves guarding the very things that wished them gone, and whether such loyalty is the noblest thing in all the lands between, or only the most tragic. Descend with me now slowly into the sewers beneath the golden city, down past the gleaming spires and the sunlit avenues, into the wet and lightless places where Lindell keeps its secret, for here is the shunning ground, and here, in the muck below the throne of the world, the Golden Order hides its shame. The Omens live here, or rather they are made to die here, the horned children born cursed and cast down, and their sorrow soaks the very stones. An Omen is a child born with horns, with thorned flesh that grows like living bramble from the body, a condition the Golden Order names as impurity, a taint upon the bloodline of grace. And because the Order cannot abide imperfection, the horns are cut away in a bloody surgery, a mutilation dressed as a cure, and those who are permitted to live carry the scars of that cutting forever. But many are not permitted even that. Many are simply sent below into the shunning grounds to dwell among filth and forgottenness, unseen and unspoken, so that the perfect city above need never look upon them. Think of the terrible arithmetic of it, gently, that a civilization which prized order and purity above all things could only maintain its beauty by burying its ugliness alive. The golden capital gleams precisely because its shame flows downward into the dark, out of sight, into the sewers where the dung-eater stalks and the shunned ones huddle. Purity above is purchased by cruelty below. The surface is radiant only because the depths are made to hold everything that radiance refuses. And who decides that horns are a curse? Here the mystery opens quietly, for the Omen are not weak, they are mighty. Morgott and Mog both were born of this cursed blood, and both grew into demigods of fearsome power. Some fragments whisper that the Omen bear the blood of an older thing, a primal current the Golden Order feared and sought to suppress, that their horns are not corruption but inheritance, a sign of some deep and ancient force the Golden Law could not tolerate and so named unclean. Perhaps the curse was never in the children, perhaps it was in the Order that could not bear them. So, as we drift towards sleep, let us hold these hidden ones with tenderness, the horned children in the dark beneath the golden floor, and let us not turn away as their own world turned away. There is a mystery in every civilization that shines too brightly, a question of what it has buried to shine so, and the shunning grounds beneath Lindell are that question made flesh and stone. We sink into rest, and we carry with us the soft, unbearable thought of children born already condemned, waiting in the wet dark beneath a city that will never say their names. Let us approach the next mystery carefully, the way one approaches something that repels and fascinates at once, for down in those same lightless sewers dwells a figure so wretched that even the shunned recoil from him, the dung-eater, a name spoken like a curse, a man who has made of defilement itself a kind of dreadful faith. We do not honor him by dwelling here. We only seek, in the gentle dark, to understand the shape of the horror. He was, they say, a serial defiler in life, a criminal so vile that he was chained and imprisoned, and yet imprisonment could not contain what he had become. For the dung-eater does not merely wish to harm the living, he wishes to curse them beyond death, to plant within their flesh a seedbed curse, a foul seed that ensures the soul, once dead, cannot return clean to the cycle of the Erdtree, but is instead reborn as an Omen, horned and cursed, defiled in every future life. His ambition is not murder, it is the corruption of the very cycle of rebirth. Consider the terrible inversion of it gently, for it reveals something about the world that made him. The Golden Order promises purity, an ordered death, and a clean return, souls gathered back into the tree. The Dung-Eater takes that promise and poisons it at the root, seeking to spread his curse across all of the lands between until every soul is Omen, until purity is not merely denied but rendered impossible forever. Where the Order hides its shame below, he would drag all shame up and smear it across creation so that no one ever again could pretend to be clean. And here a darker question stirs beneath the filth. Is the Dung-Eater merely a monster, or is he in some warped way an answer to the Order that made the shunning grounds? He was formed in the same sewers where the horned children are cast down. He is a product of the purity he now seeks to destroy. Perhaps his madness is the mirror the Golden Order deserves, the buried ugliness given voice and will and a hunger to spread itself, the shame refusing at last to stay hidden and vowing instead to swallow the whole shining world. So we hold him at arm's length as sleep approaches, this creature of the deepest dark, and we do not embrace his curse, but we do not look wholly away from what he means. There is a lesson folded into his filth, that a world which buries its impurity too deep may one day breed something that wishes only to make impurity universal. We drift now upward, out of the sewers, toward cleaner air, grateful to leave him below, and yet carrying the quiet, uneasy knowledge that he too was once only a child of the cursed dark, shaped by a city that taught him he could never be clean. Now let us turn the gaze inward, softly, toward the strangest figure of all, the one whose story we ourselves are living, for we are the tarnished, exiles reborn, dead things called back to a dying world, and even we do not fully know what we are or why the golden light has chosen once more to touch us. Let us hold our own mystery as tenderly as any other, drifting through the question of our own beginning. We are the descendants of those who once dwelt in the lands between and then lost the guidance of grace, whose eyes dimmed as the golden glow abandoned them, and who, bereft of grace, wandered away across the fog to distant lands, and there in time died. Tarnished they named us, for the light had left us, and we were exiled from the world of the Erd-Tree, cast out to perish far from home. We are, in the most literal sense, the forsaken, the grace-forgotten, the discarded children of a golden age that decided it no longer needed us. And yet we have returned, drawn back across the sea by a grace rekindled, our dimmed eyes lit once more with that faint golden gleam, called home to a world that lies in ruin. Why now? Why us? Here the mystery deepens, for grace does not touch the tarnished by accident, and the timing of our summoning is bound to the shattering of the Elden Ring and the sundering of the Order. We were forsaken when the world was whole, and recalled when the world was broken, as though we are meant to be its answer, or its ending, or both. Perhaps we are a contingency, a seed set aside against catastrophe, exiles kept in reserve so that when the demigods fell to madness and the ring lay shattered, there might yet be some grace-touched soul willing to climb toward the throne. Perhaps the greater will that guides the Order sowed us far away precisely so that we might come home hardened by death, unbound by loyalty to any faction, free to become whatever the ruined world requires. Or perhaps our return is no design at all, only the blind stirring of a wounded Order grasping for any hand that might mend it. So as sleep gathers, let us rest inside our own uncertainty, we who are dead and not dead, forsaken and chosen, tarnished and yet gleaming faintly gold. There is a quiet comfort in it, that even we who walk the path do not know its end, that our grace was taken without our asking and returned without our understanding. We drift now through the fog of our own becoming, exiles turning homeward, unsure whether we are meant to save this world or to inherit its final silence, and content for this one drowsy moment simply not to know. Follow with me now the golden thread that has led us through all our wandering, the faint luminous trail that unspools before our feet whenever we lose our way, the guidance of grace, that gentle glowing current which points ever toward our purpose. We have followed it without question, as one follows a light in the dark, And yet the deeper we drift, the more we must wonder, what is this light, and whose will lies behind its guiding? Grace, in the lands between, is no mere accident of fate, but a substance, a golden gift bestowed by the Erdtree and the greater will beyond it, a mark upon the eyes that grants direction and purpose to those who bear it. When we kneel at a site of grace and see the shimmering trail extend toward some distant destination, we are seeing, we are told, the will of the Order made visible, a soft insistence that our steps carry meaning, that there is somewhere we are meant to go. It is comfort and command at once, a hand upon the shoulder that is also a hand upon the reins. But here, let us pause and turn the light over slowly, for who decides where grace points us? The trail leads us toward the Erdtree, toward the throne, toward the mending of the ring, and thus it serves the aims of some vast intention that is not necessarily our own. We take grace for a blessing, a kindness that keeps us from wandering lost, and perhaps it is. Yet a guide is also a shepherd, and a shepherd leads the flock where the shepherd wills, and we may ask, in the drowsy honesty of the dark, whether we walk our own path at all, or only the path of the golden light has chosen for us. Consider, too, how grace was once taken and now restored, how the same force that abandoned our ancestors now leads us onward, and consider that the greater will, the outer God beyond the Erdtree, is the ultimate source of this guidance. When we follow the golden trail, we may be following the desire of a distant, silent, unknowable power, one that shattered orders and raised them, one whose purposes stretch beyond any single life. The light feels intimate, personal, ours. It may in truth be the faintest edge of something cosmic and indifferent, using us as it uses all its instruments. So let us hold the golden trail gently as we sink towards sleep, grateful for its guidance and wary of it too, walking its light and yet keeping somewhere within the small free question of whether we would choose this road if the glow did not insist. Perhaps grace is love, and perhaps it is leash, and perhaps in the lands between there was never any difference between the two. We drift now along the luminous thread, one drowsy step and then another, following the light toward a destiny we did not choose but have somehow wearily come to call our own. Let us turn now to a seeker of a different kind, not one guided by grace, but one who sought to master every secret of the world by will and cunning. Gideon Ofnir, called the All-Knowing, the spy master of the Round Table Hold, whose hunger was not for the throne itself, but for knowledge of everything and everyone who might approach it. And let us find in his story the quiet terror of a mind that learned almost enough to know it could never learn enough. Gideon gathered secrets the way others gather gold, spinning a web of informants and whispers across the whole of the lands between, learning the histories of the demigods, the paths to their sanctums, the weaknesses of every great foe. He knew the way to Radun and the way to Rykard. He knew the hidden roads and the buried truths, and he shared this knowledge at first, as a mentor might, guiding fellow Tarnished toward their trials. His title was not vanity alone. He truly had learned more of the world's dark corners than any living soul. And yet the mystery of Gideon is the mystery of the horizon of knowing, the point past which even the all-knowing cannot see. For there came a truth that broke him, a knowledge so vast and so final that it turned his purpose to ash, the understanding that the throne perhaps was beyond the reach of any Tarnished, that some doors were sealed by powers no cunning could unlock. When he grasped at last the true shape of what lay ahead, when he glimpsed the mind of the outer gods and the depth of the design, his ambition curdled into despair, and the seeker of all secrets decided that we must be stopped. Consider the sorrow in that turning. Gideon did not fall to greed or malice in the simple way. He fell because he learned too much and understood, or believed he understood, that the effort was hopeless, that no Tarnished should ascend, that the knowledge he had spent his life gathering ended in a wall he could not pass. His final stand against us is the act of a man defending a despair, insisting that because he could not find the way must not exist. The all-knowing became the all-fearing, undone not by ignorance, but by the terrible edge of his own wisdom. So let us hold Gideon gently as sleep draws near, this scholar of secrets who learned the one truth that broke him, and let us wonder where the true limit of his knowledge lay. Did he see the whole design and rightly despair, or did he stop just short of the deeper secret, the one that would have shown him a way he could not imagine? The law does not say. It leaves him there at the boundary of the knowable, a mind that reached to the horizon and mistook it for the end of the world. And we drift on past him, into the unknown he feared, carrying the soft, uneasy thought that to know almost everything may be the loneliest fate of all. Come now to a stranger place, a hall that exists nowhere and everywhere, the round table hold, the gathering place of the tarnished, a warm chamber of firelight and quiet company that floats, we slowly realize, entirely outside the world we walk. We come and go from it by grace alone, stepping from a wind-swept ruin into its firelit calm, and never once do we ask, at first, where it truly is. And that unasked question is itself one of the softest mysteries in all the lands between. The hold is said to be disembodied, unmoored from the geography of the lands between, a place reached only through the guidance of grace, a sanctuary that seems to sit beside the world rather than within it. Its master is never present, its purpose never fully spoken, and yet all who bear the calling of the tarnished may find their way here to warm themselves at its fire, to trade and speak and rest among fellow exiles. It is home of a kind for those who have no home, and like all such gifts, it invites the question of who has given it and why. For a sanctuary does not arise by chance, and a hall reachable only by grace is a hall bound to the will that grants grace. Some whisper that the round table hold is tied to the two fingers, and the greater will they serve, that it is a way station prepared for us by the same distant power that rekindled our grace and set us upon our path. If so, then the fire we gather at is not merely comfort, but instrument, a place where the tarnished are gathered and observed and gently directed, a pen as much as a parlour, a warmth that keeps us close to hand. And yet, and here the mystery softens rather than sharpens, the hold is also a place of genuine fellowship, where we meet the sorrowful and the strange, the maidens and the smiths and the seekers, where real bonds form in the flickering light. Whatever cold purpose may lie behind its making, the hold has become something the greater will perhaps did not intend, a true refuge, a company of the lost who find in one another a fleeting belonging. The tool has become a home, or the home has always secretly been a tool, and we drift between the two readings without needing to choose. So let us rest at last beside that impossible fire in the hall that floats outside the world, grateful for its warmth and mindful of its mystery. Perhaps the round table hold is a gift of love from a will that cares for us. Perhaps it is a cunning fold in the design, a place to keep the tarnished tame and guided. Perhaps, as with grace itself, it is both at once and always was. We sink now into the firelit quiet among the fellow exiles, in a room that is nowhere, warmed by a flame whose keeper we have never seen, and content for this drowsy hour simply to belong. Let us seek out now the most silent of all the seekers, a figure who speaks not a single word in all his long contemplation, Goldmask, the sage of the Golden Order, who stands frozen in thought upon a distant bridge wrapped in gold, his masked face turned inward toward a problem so vast that no words could hold it. He is the deepest thinker in the lands between, and his mystery is the mystery of thought itself pushed to its final edge. Goldmask was a scholar of the Golden Order fundamentalism, a devotee of Radagon's perfect law, one who believed that the Order was a thing of reason, a logic that could be understood and refined toward flawlessness. And so he did what few ever dare. He turned the full force of his intellect upon the Order itself, not to worship it, but to examine it, to seek within its golden architecture the hidden flaw, the crack in the foundation, the error that had let the world fall into ruin. He sought in silence to correct the very law of creation. We find him not preaching but pondering, standing utterly still in profound meditation, communicating only through gesture, and this silence is itself a kind of teaching. For the truth he pursues cannot be spoken easily, cannot be reduced to sermon or scripture, and can only be approached by the slow, relentless labor of a mind working alone at the edge of the sayeable. Through his companion Corin, and through our own faithful watching, we witness him arrive by degrees at revelation, each realization moving him, wordless, towards the next, until the shape of the flaw begins at last to show. And what he finds, when he finds it, is staggering in its quiet audacity that the Golden Order is imperfect because it binds law to a god, to Marika, to the divine will, and that a truly perfect order would be founded not upon a deity, but upon a principle beyond any god, an order of law made whole and incorruptible, freed from the frailty of the divine. He seeks to mend the Elden Ring itself, to correct the cosmic law at its root, to give the world an order that no god's flaw could ever again undo. The silent sage would rewrite the very grammar of creation. So let us hold Goldmask gently as we drift towards sleep, this wordless seeker standing on his bridge above the ruin, thinking thoughts too large for speech. There is something profoundly moving in him, the faith that even the law of the gods might be understood and improved by patient reason, the hope that the flaw which broke the world might be found and healed by a single devoted mind. Whether his perfect order would be salvation or only another and colder cage, the law leaves open, and we sink into rest beside his long silence, comforted by the thought that somewhere, always, someone is still thinking, still seeking the hidden crack, still believing the world might yet be mended. Let us dwell now upon the law itself, the great golden architecture that Goldmask examined, and that the whole of the lands between was built upon Golden Order fundamentalism, the faith of reason and regulation, and let us trace slowly the beautiful and brittle logic that promised a perfect world and delivered a shattered one. For here is a mystery not of a person, but of a principle, the question of why perfection cracked. The Golden Order held that the world could be governed by law as pure and fixed as mathematics, that death and life, cause and effect, order and grace, all could be bound into a single flawless system radiating from the Elden Ring at the heart of the Erdtree. Its fundamentalist scholars, chief among them Radagon, sought to understand this law as one understands a proof, to codify it, to defend it against the chaos of the outer gods and the corruptions of madness. It was a faith in order as the highest good, in regulation as a form of love, in a universe that could be made to make sense. And Radagon stands at the center of this law like a figure carved from paradox, the red-haired champion who became Marika's own other half, who upheld the Golden Order with unbending devotion, even as the deepest truth of his being undermined it. For Radagon is Marika, the two of them one soul in two forms, and this single hidden fact is a crack running through the very foundation of the perfect order, a contradiction sealed inside the god who guards the law. The order's most faithful servant and the order's shattering betrayer are the same being. Here the mystery gathers its full weight. An order founded upon a god is only as whole as that god, and Marika, who raised the Golden Order, is also she who shattered the Elden Ring and broke the world. The flaw Goldmask sought was not a distant error, but the beating heart of the thing, that divinity itself is unstable, that a law bound to a will can be undone by that will's own anguish, that the perfect order carried its own fracture from the first, because it rested upon a soul that could suffer and doubt and rebel. Perfection built on a god must break when the god breaks, so let us hold this brittle golden law as sleep enfolds us and marvel at its sorrowful lesson, that the dream of a flawless order may be the most dangerous dream of all, for it hides its crack precisely where it feels most solid. In the divine foundation it dares not question. Radagon strikes the wall in his silent chamber, mending, mending, forever mending, a ring that will not stay whole. And in his endless labor we see the whole tragedy of the Golden Order, a perfection that must be repaired eternally because it was never from the beginning truly whole. We drift now past the golden law into a softer dark where nothing needs to be perfect to be at peace. Rise with me now beyond the world entirely, past the Erd tree's highest branches into a realm of endless golden dust and drifting light, for here waits the strangest guardian of all, the Elden Beast, the vast serpentine vessel in which the Elden Ring itself resides, a creature that is less a monster than a manifestation, the very body of the law made flesh and star. To gaze upon it is to gaze upon the Order's own heart, coiling in the void. The Elden Beast is described as the vessel of the Elden Ring, a servant of the greater will, an emissary of the outer god sent to embody and to guard the law that binds the world. It is not native to the lands between in the way that beasts and men are native. It came from beyond, a fragment of some cosmic intention, and within its radiant serpentine form, the Elden Ring is held as a heart is held within a body, the abstract law given a living vessel to inhabit. When we face it at the world's summit, we do not fight a king or a demigod. We fight the Order itself, embodied. And here the mystery unfurls in shimmering coils, for what is the relationship between the beast and Marika, between the vessel and the god who was crucified upon the tree? Marika, it seems, was herself a vessel too, a god chosen to bear the Order, and yet above and behind her drifts this greater and stranger thing, the beast that holds the ring more fundamentally still. Perhaps Marika was only the beast's counterpart in the world of flesh, the two of them together forming the Order's presence, one divine and human-shaped, one cosmic and serpentine, both bound to a will that neither fully commands. Consider, too, the beauty and the coldness of it, gently, for the Elden Beast is radiant, golden, celestial, and utterly inhuman. It does not speak, it does not plead, it fights with the impersonal splendor of a law defending itself, scattering golden dust and holy fire across the void. In its indifference, we glimpse the true nature of the Order we have served, that beneath all the grace and guidance and golden trails, there lies something that does not love us, does not know us, exists only to preserve the shape of the law it was sent to hold. The warmth of grace at its source is this cold and shining thing. So let us hold the Elden Beast in our drowsing thoughts as one holds a distant star, beautiful and remote and not entirely kind. Perhaps it is the truest face of the Golden Order, the honest form beneath the comforting mask, a cosmic servant guarding a cosmic law with no thought for the small warm lives beneath it. And when we strike it down, we strike down the Order's very vessel, and the ring falls free at last into our hands, and the world holds its breath. We drift now in that golden dust, weightless, unafraid, watching the great serpent coil and gleam in the endless dark, and feeling faintly how vast and how indifferent the source of all our guidance truly was. Let us now approach the most sorrowful heart of all the mysteries, the wound at the center of the world, the fate of Marika herself, the eternal queen, the god of the Golden Order, whom we find at the very end, not enthroned in glory, but bound, broken, crucified upon the trunk of the Erd tree she once ruled, a god imprisoned by her own order. Let us drift toward her slowly, with reverence, for her crime and her punishment are the axis upon which the whole tragedy turns. Marika shattered the Elden Ring. This is the act, the great transgression, the moment when the god who upheld the Order turned upon it and broke the sacred law with her own hands, scattering its great runes among her demigod children and plunging the lands between into the long chaos of the Shattering. And for this, for daring to break what she was made to guard, she was bound to the tree, nailed and cracked, and held in eternal suffering, punished by the very greater will she had served, a god chastised by a god above her. But why? Here the deepest mystery opens, and the fragments offer only shadows. Some whisper that Marika broke the ring in grief and rage over the massacre of a people, the slaughter of those she had once belonged to, that her rebellion was the anguish of a mother and a mourner turned against the order that demanded such cruelty. Others sense a longer game, that Marika sought to summon a tarnished, to break the order precisely so that a new champion might come and remake it, that her shattering was not madness, but a desperate and hidden design to free the world from a will she had come to despise. We cannot know. She left us only riddles carved in gold, and there is the further sorrow of her divided self, that Marika is Radagon, that within her the Order's destroyer and the Order's most faithful servant war eternally, one striking the ring apart and the other forever trying to mend it. To be imprisoned upon the tree is to be trapped inside that contradiction, a soul at war with itself, punished for a crime that half of her committed and half of her despises. Her crucifixion is not merely the caging of a rebel, but the freezing of an unresolvable anguish, a god held forever at the moment of her own breaking. So let us hold Marika with the deepest tenderness, as sleep at last enfolds us, this queen and god and mourner, bound to the tree at the summit of the world, suffering for a crime whose true nature she alone understands. Perhaps she was a tyrant justly punished. Perhaps she was a liberator who broke a cruel order to free us all. Perhaps she was simply a grieving soul who could no longer bear the weight of the golden law and shattered it in her sorrow. We drift now beneath her tree, in its vast and quiet shadow, and we do not judge her, and we do not resolve her. We only rest at the foot of a crucified God and grieve softly, for a mystery that even eternity has not been able to lay to rest. Let us turn back now, far back, to an age before our own, to a war so old that only ash remains to remember it, for the Erdtree we know has burned before and will need to burn again, and the secret of its burning leads us to a frozen mountaintop and a vanished people, and to the terrible truth that the golden tree cannot die by any ordinary flame. Drift with me into that ancient cold, and let us uncover the war that made it so. In the deep past, before the Golden Order stood unchallenged, there dwelt upon the northern peaks the fire giants, a mighty people who tended a flame that was anathema to the Erdtree, a fire that could truly burn the sacred tree, the one force in all the lands between capable of undoing the golden immortality. And so there was war, a great and merciless war, the forces of the Erdtree marching against the giants to extinguish their threat, to snuff the flame that endangered the eternal order. The golden tree could tolerate no fire, but the fire it could not control. The giants were defeated, all but destroyed, their flame nearly extinguished, and here the ancient cruelty deepens, for the last of them was not simply killed, but cursed, condemned to tend the dying embers of that flame for all eternity, chained by fate to the very fire the Order had feared, kept alive precisely so that the flame might be watched and never spread. A whole people reduced to a single doomed guardian, sitting in the snow at the roof of the world, feeding coals that the Golden Order had forbidden and could not entirely quench. And why does this ancient war matter to us, drowsing at the world's late hour? Because the Erdtree bars our way, its roots grown thick and impassable, and it cannot be entered, cannot be surpassed until it burns, and it cannot burn by any common fire, only by the ancient flame of the giants, the flame of ruin, the one fire old enough and hostile enough to consume a god's tree. To pass beyond the golden barrier, we must journey to that frozen peak, defeat the last cursed giant, and claim the forbidden flame, kindling once more the very fire the Order fought an age to extinguish. So let us hold this ancient war gently as sleep draws near, this half-forgotten sorrow of giants and fire buried beneath the snows of memory. There is a deep and mournful irony folded into it, that the order which sought to burn away every threat to its immortality could only ever be undone by the one flame it failed to fully kill, that its perfect eternity always carried, on a distant frozen peak, the seed of its own ending. We drift now toward that cold summit, toward the embers that outlived a genocide, and we feel softly how the fire a god fears most is always the fire a god cannot entirely destroy. Let us end this stretch of our long drift, where the world grows coldest and highest, upon the wind-scoured peak of the giant's mountain-top, in the company of the very last of a murdered people, the fire giant, sole survivor of a race the golden order all but erased, keeper of the flame that can burn a god's own tree. Come with me into this quiet, this snow and this ember, and let us grieve softly for the loneliest guardian in all the lands between. The fire giants were once many, a proud and towering people who worshipped a flame that stood against the Erd-tree, a fire of ruin that alone could threaten the golden immortality. And when the Order made war upon them and broke them, one was left, the last, and upon this single survivor was laid the cruelest of sentences, to tend the forbidden flame forever, alone atop the frozen world, neither permitted to die nor allowed to let the fire spread. For an age beyond counting he has sat in the snow, the last of his kind, feeding embers in the silence, a whole extinguished people distilled into one enduring sorrow. Consider the weight of that solitude gently, for it is almost beyond bearing. He remembers a people who are gone. He tends a purpose that was forced upon him by those who slew his kin. He is at once the vanquished and the jailer of his own sacred flame, kept alive not out of mercy, but out of the Order's need to keep the fire watched and contained. When we climb to face him, we do not meet a mere obstacle, but the living monument of a genocide, the final ember of a warmth the golden world could not abide, still burning, still faithful, still achingly alone. And in his flame lies the paradox that closes the circle of this ancient sorrow, for the flame of ruin he guards is the one power that can burn the Erd-tree, the fire the Order feared above all others, and to claim it we must defeat him and take up the very burden he has borne. We become, in that moment, the carriers of the forbidden flame, the ones who will do what the giants were destroyed for threatening to do, kindle the fire that consumes a god's tree. The last giant's long imprisonment ends only when we arrive to fulfill the very danger he was condemned to prevent. So let us hold the fire giant with the deepest tenderness as we drift onward, this final mourner upon the frozen peak, this lonely keeper of a fire older than the golden law. There is a sorrow in him that gathers up all the sorrows we have drifted through, the shunned and the discarded, the faithful and the imprisoned, the gods and the giants and the tarnished dead, all of them bound by the same ancient cruelty, all of them longing for an ending or a peace that never came. We rest now beside his ember in the high cold silence, and we let the flame burn low, and we carry with us the last warmth of a vanished people, and its quiet unanswered questions into the deeper dark. Come, let us drift together into the quiet places of the lands between, where the war-torn earth softens into sleep, and let us begin where so many things end, in a dream. There is a name that surfaces only in whispers, painted on the labels of soft violet flasks, murmured by those who have surrendered to slumber, and that name is Saint Trina. We are told, gently, in fragments, that Trina and Miquella are one, that the Empyrean child of the Golden Order carried within himself a second self, a tender twin, and that this self was the god of sleep, of dreaming, of the merciful oblivion that lets a suffering thing rest. Consider the strangeness of it, and let it unspool slowly. Miquella, the most fearsome Empyrean, brightest of Marika's children, forever cursed with the body of a child that would not grow, sought to break the shackles of his fate and to become a god of unalloyed love. Yet before he set out upon that long and terrible road, he set something aside. He put down his gentler half. He abandoned Saint Trina, the part of him that offered sleep, and in doing so he left behind perhaps the very mercy that might have saved him. We find Trina only at the edges of things, in St. Trina's torch that reveals the maddening moths, in St. Trina's lily whose scent lulls the frenzied into calm, in the sleeping flowers that spill across the Altus plateau like violet snowfall. And through these traces, a soft voice reaches us in dreams, a voice that pities the tarnished, that speaks of an unbearable weariness, that seems, in some tellings, to long for a death that would end all endings. Perhaps Trina wished the world to sleep and never wake. Perhaps this was cruelty. Perhaps it was the deepest kindness of all. Here the mystery deepens rather than resolves, and we must hold two truths at once, the way one holds a fragile thing in the dark. Is Trina a woman, a saint canonized by the faithful, or is Trina simply Miquella wearing tenderness like a second face? Why did he cast off sleep before pursuing love, as though the two could not walk together, as though to love perfectly one must first refuse all rest? We are not told. The flasks say only that they are one, and leave the seam between them hidden, and so we linger here at the threshold, in the company of a God who set aside the power to grant sleep even as we ourselves reach toward it. There is something aching in that thought, something that settles over the mind like dusk over the plateau. Miquella wanted a world of love and could not keep his gift of rest. We want only to rest, and perhaps in this dreaming we touch the half of him that he let fall. Let us hold Saint Trina close as we drift, and ask nothing more of her than the quiet she was always meant to give. Let us lift our eyes now from the sleeping flowers to the cold and patient stars, and let us follow the long thought of a witch who dreamed of a different sky. Rani the witch, daughter of Radagon and Renala, an Empyrean marked for godhood, looked upon the age she was born into and found it unbearable, and so she conceived of an ending unlike any other, an ending she named the Age of Stars. It is an order not of the Erd tree's golden certainty, but of distance, of the far off and the dim, of a divinity that withdraws rather than reigns. To understand her longing, we must first understand what she fled. Rani was bound to an outer god, the two fingers and the greater will having placed within her a destined death, having tied her soul to forces beyond the lands between, and she came to despise this intimacy, this meddling of distant powers, wearing the mask of order. So she stole her own death, she abandoned her flesh, and she resolved that if she should become a god, she would take her order far away, beyond the reach of touch and prying, into the cold comfort of the night. Hear her own words as they drift through the dark, for she speaks them softly and they linger. She would remove life and souls, she says, far from the lands between, along with law and providence, and the tyranny of the Golden Order's certainties. All would continue, but at a distance, governed by the quiet logic of the stars rather than the warm and grasping hand of a nearby god. Mystery would return to the world. Faith and communion would rely upon oneself alone, for the gods would no longer stoop to whisper in the ear of the faithful. Perhaps this is liberation, and perhaps it is abandonment, and we cannot say which, for the beauty and the terror of the Age of Stars is that it refuses to comfort us. A world where the divine turns its back and lets us wander, unwatched, unaided, sovereign and alone beneath an indifferent firmament. Is that freedom, or is it the loneliest exile ever devised? Rani does not soften the choice. She offers only her cold hand and the long silence of 1,000 years of night. And still there is something in that vision that soothes even as it chills, something that makes the mind go quiet the way it goes quiet beneath a clear winter sky. To be released from the demanding eyes of a god, to have grief and love and faith be one's own private country, to let the world continue softly and far away, this too is a kind of rest. Let us drift a while inside Rani's dream, this order of the cold and the distant and the dim, and let the stars keep their silence and let us keep ours. Stay with the witch a little longer, for her story hides within it a smaller and stranger mystery, a mystery of borrowed flesh and hidden names, and it is the kind of thing best pondered slowly, in the dark, with the mind half loosed towards sleep. When we first meet Ranni, she does not stand before us in her true body at all. She sits, still and porcelain pale, a great doll with a witch's hat and closed and dreaming features, and we come to understand that the living Ranni has fled her flesh entirely, and now speaks to us through this vessel of wood and enchantment. The tale she tells is one of a terrible and deliberate act. On the night of the Black Knives, that infamous night when Godwyn the Golden was slain in soul, Ranni too plunged a fragment of the same stolen rune of death into her own body, killing the flesh she was born to, severing herself from the destined death the two fingers had planted within her. She gave up her true body to escape the grasp of the greater will, and this is why she drifts now among dolls and distant stars, a soul that has slipped its appointed leash and refuses to be reeled back in. But there is a gentler name folded inside this grim history, and it is the name Renna. Long before we climb to meet the great witch upon her tower, we hear of a witch named Renna who once lingered at the church of Ele beneath the moon, and the echo between Renna and Ranni is no accident. Perhaps Renna was a name she wore when she wished to move unseen, a softer self for quieter errands, the way one might loosen a formal title in the company of the trusted. The maiden called Renna and the witch called Ranni blur at the edges, and we are never quite told where one ends and the other begins. And so we are left to wonder at the layers of her, this being of many bodies and many names, a soul in a doll, a witch beneath the moon, a stolen night that set her free and cursed her both. Which is the true Ranni, we might ask, and the question dissolves even as we form it, for perhaps she is all of them at once. Perhaps identity itself grows fluid when one has died on purpose and lived on anyway. Perhaps the doll dreams the witch, and the witch dreams Renna, and Renna dreams the cold, far stars. There is a deep and drowsy comfort in that thought, in a self that is not fixed but drifting, that can set down one body and take up another like a sleeper turning in the night. We ourselves are loosening now, slipping gently from the day's hard shape towards something softer and less certain. Let us take Ranni's mystery with us into that loosening, the witch who stole her own night and lived among dolls, and let our own names grow quiet and far away, and let us rest as she rests, dreaming. Let us turn now to devotion, and to the terrible shape it can take, for there walks in Ranni's story a figure whose loyalty is so absolute that it circles round into tragedy, and his name is Blade, the half-wolf. He is a towering thing, black-furred and yellow-eyed, a shadow-bound beast given the speech and heart of a man, and he was made for one purpose only, to serve Ranni the witch, to be her sword and her shield and her sworn companion through whatever darkness her fate should lead her. Consider how he came to be, for his very existence is a chain. Blade was bound to Ranni by the two fingers themselves, made her shadow, her destined protector, and there is a cruel irony hidden in that binding that he does not perhaps fully see. He was fashioned as an instrument of the very powers his mistress came to despise, the greater will's servants having stitched his loyalty to her soul, so that his love for her and his leash to them were one and the same thread, impossible to unpick. And so, when Ranni turns against her destiny, when she steals her death and flees the grasp of the two fingers and sets her heart upon the far cold age of stars, a fracture opens in Blade that he cannot bridge. His duty was to guard her on the path the fingers laid, yet she has abandoned that path, and the shadow loyalty woven into his being begins, slowly, to turn against the very woman it was meant to serve. We hear it in his final scenes, the great wolf raving, torn between the devotion he chose and the compulsion that was carved into him, until at last he must be put down, undone by the collision of two loves that were never meant to war. There is a grief here that settles heavy on the heart, the grief of a creature who did everything right and was betrayed by his own making. Blade never wavered in his wish to serve Ranni. It was the world, and the gods, and the cruel design of his birth that wavered beneath him. Perhaps he understood, in the end, that his death was folded into his loyalty from the very beginning, that to love Ranni truly was, someday, to be destroyed for her sake. Perhaps he would have chosen it all again, regardless. And is that not the deepest and most sorrowful kind of faithfulness? The kind that knows it leads to ruin and walks the road anyway. Let us hold the half-wolf gently in our thoughts as the night deepens, this loyal and doomed and tender-hearted beast howling at a moon that could not save him. There is something in his devotion that quiets the mind even as it aches, a purity that asks for nothing and gives everything. Let his faithfulness watch over our own drifting, and let us sleep as those who are guarded even by the doomed. There is a gentler guardian in Ranni's tale, and after the storm of Blade's grief, let us rest a while in his steadier shade, for his devotion burns low and constant like a forge banked for the night. His name is Iji, a blacksmith of the War Council, a great and stone-still giant who has taken it upon himself to watch over the witch, and where Blade's loyalty was carved into his making, Iji seems freely given, quiet and all the more moving for its plainness. He sits apart, this old craftsman, near the ruined foot of the Carian manor, and he speaks of Ranni with a father's weary tenderness. He calls himself her ally, worries over her safety, and he greets the tarnished not with suspicion, but with a careful, measured trust, for he judges those who would draw near his mistress and decides in his slow way whether they mean her harm. There is nothing grand in his service. He does not rave or rage. He simply keeps his post, as he has kept it for longer than we can know. A smith whose finest work is the shelter of one soul, and yet a shadow lies across even his devotion, for E.G. seems to understand what Blad cannot, that loyalty to Ranni in her rebellion may cost everything. He speaks with a quiet foreknowledge, an old man's acceptance of what is coming, and should the great puppeteer Seluvis attempt his schemes against her, it is E.G. who moves against that threat, though it may mean his own undoing. He guards her not blindly but with open eyes, knowing the price, having long ago decided that the price was worth paying. Here then is a different portrait of devotion than the wolf's tragic frenzy, a devotion that is calm and clear-eyed and utterly without spectacle. Perhaps this is the truer loyalty, the kind that does not need to be bound by gods or fate, the kind that simply chooses morning after morning to remain. E.G. asks for no recognition and expects no reward. He is a giant who has made himself small in service, a maker of weapons who has become, in his last chapter, a maker of safety. Let us take E.G.'s steadiness into the deepening quiet, this patient guardian at the manor's ruined edge, and let his calm become our calm. There is a rest that comes from being watched over by someone who is not afraid, someone who has weighed the darkness and stayed regardless, and in his low and constant vigilance we may find our own breathing slow. Let the old smith keep his watch, let his forge burn softly through the night, and let us, guarded by such quiet love, at last lay down the weight of waking and sleep. Not all devotion is pure, and now we must drift toward a darker corner of Ranni's court, where a smiling sorcerer keeps his gallery of the beautiful dead, and let us look upon his work slowly, the way one studies something troubling in a dream. Seluvis, the preceptor, the puppeteer, presents himself as another of Ranni's loyal retainers, robed and courteous and full of soft counsel, yet beneath that mannered surface coils an ambition so cold that it turns the stomach even as it fascinates the mind. His art is the making of puppets, and here the horror unfolds gently. Seluvis takes the bodies of the fallen, of women renowned in life for their beauty or their power, and he binds their souls into articulated dolls, playthings that he arranges in a hidden cellar and admires at his leisure. He speaks of them as a collector speaks of treasures, and he is forever seeking new specimens, forever appraising the living for their future worth as ornaments. The dead do not rest in Seluvis's care. They are posed and kept and owned, and his ambition climbs higher than mere collection to a scheme of breathtaking treachery, for Seluvis entrusts to the tarnished a potion, a phial of glamour, and asks that it be delivered to Nephili under the pretense of a gift. But the potion is no gift at all. It is a draught meant to break a will and bind a soul, to reduce a proud and living warrior to another puppet in his gallery, and worse, we come to suspect that his true design reaches toward Rani herself, that even his mistress is, in his secret heart, only the finest doll he has not yet claimed. Consider the chill of that ambition, the wish not merely to serve or to love, but to possess utterly, to take a living soul and still its every choice, and keep it forever obedient and lovely and dead. Seluvis does not hate his intended victims. That is the terrible part. He admires them. He desires them precisely for their vitality, and his desire is to extinguish that vitality and preserve only the shape of it, a beauty emptied of will. It is love turned entirely to appetite, devotion inverted into ownership. Let us not linger too long in his cellar, yet let us carry away from it a single quiet thought as we sink towards sleep, that there is a kind of grasping that would cage even the ones it claims to cherish, and that true rest can only be found where the will is left free. We drift now of our own accord, unbound, unbidden, no puppeteer's strings upon us, our souls our own. Let Seluvis keep his silent dolls in their loveless dark. We choose the deeper freedom of sleep, and we sink into it willingly, and no glamour holds us but the soft glamour of the night. Let us follow the thread of that intended victim now, for Nephili carries within her a mystery of blood and belonging, and it is a mystery worth turning over slowly in the dimming light. She is a warrior of fierce and honest heart, raised as the daughter of Gideon Ofnir, the all-knowing, gathered up by him as an infant and brought into his keeping. Yet the truth of her origin lies elsewhere, tangled and unresolved in the lineage of the very first Elden Lord. The whispers gather around Godfrey, first Elden Lord, the Lord of blood and battle, banished in shame and reborn as the beast Huara Lu, and around the great beast Sirosh, who rode upon his shoulder. For Nephili's surname is Lu, and the name is no small coincidence, and it hints that the blood of Godfrey, the untamed and mighty blood of the warrior who first stood beside Marika, may run within her veins. She may be his descendant, a scion of that fierce and exiled house, an heir to strength she does not fully know she carries. Yet nothing here is certain, and the ambiguity is the very heart of her. Nephili does not know herself. She was found, not born into knowledge, raised by a schemer who kept his own counsel, and she moves through her story, searching for a strength and a place that feel forever just beyond her grasp. She doubts herself, she falters, she struggles beneath the weight of a heritage she can only dimly sense, and in this uncertainty she becomes perhaps the most human of all the figures we have wandered among tonight. There is something tender in her striving, and something that touches the quiet fear we all carry, the fear of not knowing what we are made of sensing a greatness or a darkness in our blood that we cannot name. Nephili reaches toward the legacy of Godfrey without ever holding it plainly, and whether she becomes a lord of her own ruined city or falls to the schemes coiled around her, she remains a soul in search of her own beginning, a daughter uncertain of her father, a warrior uncertain of her worth. Let us hold her gently as the night grows full, this brave and doubting woman with the blood of kings perhaps sleeping in her veins, and let her uncertainty remind us that we need not know all of ourselves to be worthy of rest. We too are made of more than we can see, of ancestries and origins that reach back further than memory, and we may lay that unknowing down for now. Let Nephili seek her lineage in the waking world. Here in the dark, we may simply be unnamed and unjudged, and let that be enough to carry us softly down into sleep. Let us rise now toward the realm of thought once more, toward one who sought to heal the world, not with a sword, but with an idea. And let us move slowly, for his is a mystery of silence and profound abstraction, best approached at the drowsy edge of understanding. Goldmask stands apart from every warring ambition, a golden-masked sage, one of Marika's own kin, who has fallen so deep into contemplation that he no longer speaks at all, communing only through gestures, lost in a meditation upon the very structure of order itself. His concern is the Elden Ring, that great and broken law that binds reality together, and he perceives within it a flaw, a fundamental fracture that no mere restoration could mend. Where others would simply repair the ring or replace its ruling principle, Goldmask reasons towards something deeper, a correction of the law itself, a reforging of order so that it might hold justice and fellowship at its core rather than the cold, golden certainty that has calcified into cruelty. He does not wish to rule. He wishes only to make the rule itself just. And the beauty of his quest lies in its wordlessness, for Goldmask arrives at his revelations through pure reason, gesturing toward truths too vast and delicate for speech. He comes to see that the Golden Order was always incomplete, that a great rune was needed to perfect it, and through long silent thought he moves toward the mending rune of perfect order, a correction that would let the fractured law of the world be healed into something whole and fair. It is philosophy as devotion, contemplation offered up as a kind of prayer. There is something deeply soothing in Goldmask's silence, in a wisdom so complete that it has passed beyond the need for words, that stands in the ruined world simply thinking patiently toward a better shape for everything. He does not rage against the injustice of the age. He studies it. He turns it over in the quiet of his mind until he perceives the single flaw at its root, and he offers, without demand or spectacle, the possibility of its mending. His is the calm of one who trusts that understanding, given time enough, may set even a broken cosmos right. Let us take that calm into our own deepening quiet, and let the mind grow still, as Goldmask's is still, wordless, unhurried, at peace among ruins. There is a rest that comes from setting down all argument, from ceasing to insist and simply contemplating, from trusting that the great flaws of the world need not be solved tonight by us. We may let the reasoning sage keep his silent vigil over the law of things, and we, releasing every word and every worry, may follow him into that wordless peace, and let perfect quiet be our own perfect order and sleep. Now we must approach a darker fire, and though it burns with a terrible light, let us gaze upon it slowly and without fear, for even ruin has its logic, and there is a strange peace to be found at the very bottom of despair. Beneath the Erdtree, beneath the great city, in the lowest depths where the wretched and the forgotten are cast away, there smoulders an outer god unlike any other, the frenzied flame, the flame of chaos, and it offers an ending that would consume not merely one order, but the very possibility of order itself. To touch it, one must descend into the deepest suffering, must walk among the disinherited and the maddened, must strip away every comfort and stand naked before a door of fire, and only then does the flame pour in. It enters through the eyes, it fills the skull with writhing light, and it marks its bearer as the Lord of frenzied flame, a would-be sovereign of chaos who would gather all the anguish of the world into a single conflagration and end it wholly, mercifully, terribly, by burning everything back into nothing. And here the mystery turns upon a question that will not settle, for is the frenzied flame pure evil, or is it a kind of desperate compassion warped by too much pain? Those who embrace it speak of ending the suffering of all things, of melting the world down so that no soul need ache again, of a love so overwhelmed by the sight of misery that it can imagine no cure but oblivion. The flame promises to take the grief of every wretched creature and answer it in the only way it knows, by unmaking the stage on which grief is possible. There is a whisper woven through this ending of Melina and her vow, of a threat she makes to one who would walk this road, that she would find them and see them dead, for the frenzied flame is the one ending she cannot abide. And that resistance, that single voice raised against the fire, tells us something, that even in a world of ruin there remains a faith that existence, with all its pain, is worth preserving, that the answer to suffering cannot simply be to end all things that suffer. Let us hold both truths as the fire dims, that the flame is monstrous, and that it was born of an unbearable pity, and let us not resolve the tension, but simply let it burn low. There is a strange calm at the heart of even this darkest of endings, the calm of one who has decided to lay every burden down at last. Yet we need not follow the flame into its oblivion to taste that release. We may set down our own small sufferings for the length of a night, gently, without unmaking anything, and let ordinary sleep grant us the mercy the flame promised through ruin. Let the chaos keep its distance, let us simply rest. We descend now to the lowest and most wretched of all the world's endings, and though its bearer is loathsome, let us look upon his vision without flinching, slowly, for even the foulest philosophy can teach the mind something before it lets it go to sleep. In the sewers beneath the round table hold there festers a figure of pure malice, the dung-eater, a defiler of corpses and of the living, whose cruelty is not thoughtless but purposeful, aimed at a single monstrous transformation of the world. His weapon is the curse, the seedbed curse, a defilement that follows the soul beyond death, so that those he ruins are condemned to be reborn again and again into misery, their suffering echoing through every future life, a corruption that does not end at the grave but propagates endlessly through the cycle of rebirth. Where other endings seek to rule or to heal or to unmake, the dung-eater seeks to spread, to plant his defilement so deep in the roots of the world that it can never be cleansed, and every soul thereafter is born already cursed. Towards this end, he covets a mending rune of his own, the mending rune of the fell curse, which, set into the Elden Ring, would remake all of existence in his own defiled image, so that the whole of the lands between and every soul within it would share his curse forever. It is an ending of universal violation, a wish to drag all the world down into the filth of the sewer, to make his own degradation the eternal condition of every living thing, that none might ever stand above him again. And yet even here, if we look with the strange clarity of the drowsing mind, we may glimpse the twisted grievance beneath the malice, the rage of one cast into the lowest place who would answer his exile by pulling the whole of creation down beside him. His is the logic of the utterly degraded soul, that if it must suffer, then all must suffer, that the only justice it can conceive is a universal ruin in which no one is clean and no one is spared. It is envy grown cosmic, resentment made into a plan for eternity. Let us not carry his curse with us, but let us carry away the lesson hidden at its edge, that resentment, followed to its end, would remake the whole world in the shape of its own wound, and that we need not answer our own hurts in kind. As we sink now toward rest, let us set down every grievance, every wish that others might share our pain, and choose instead the clean and simple peace of letting go. The defiler may keep his sewer and his curses. We rise in sleep towards something gentler, and we leave all defilement far behind us in the dark. Let us turn from the world's would-be destroyers to the one who set the whole strange pilgrimage in motion, and let us ponder her purpose slowly, for it is a riddle wrapped in grief, and the deeper we drift, the stranger it becomes. At the beginning of all our wandering there is a summons, a call sent out across the seas to the tarnished, the exiled dead of the lands between, those stripped of grace and cast out long ago, bidding them return home now to seek the throne and become Elden Lord. And behind that summons stands Marika, the Eternal, the vessel of the Golden Order, in some sense its god. Yet the mystery thickens the moment we ask why, for Marika is also the one who broke the Elden Ring. It was her own hand that shattered the great law she was bound to embody, an act of rebellion or of anguish or of both, and for it she was punished, bound in fragments to the trunk of the Erd tree, imprisoned within the very order she once ruled. Why then would she call home the tarnished, unless her summons and her shattering are two halves of a single desperate design, a mother turning against the house of the gods that had used her? Perhaps her message is a plea disguised as a command, the cry of one who wishes the whole rotten order overthrown and cannot do it herself, and so reaches out to the discarded and the graceless, the only ones free enough from the golden order's grip to end it. The tarnished were cast out, denied the guidance of grace, and in that very abandonment they became perhaps the only souls capable of choosing freely what the world should become. Marika may have summoned home not champions of her order, but its appointed undoers, and there is a grief that trembles beneath the whole design. For Marika's rebellion cost her everything, her children scattered and slain and corrupted, her body broken and bound, her order collapsed into the long twilight of the Shattering. Whatever she intended, she paid for it in a coin of unimaginable loss, and her final message reaches us across that ruin like a voice from within a tomb, ambiguous, sorrowful, and vast, asking us to finish something she could only begin. Let us hold her riddle gently as we settle deeper towards sleep, this god who broke her own law and called the exiled home, this mother of a shattered house whose true purpose we may never fully know. There is a strange comfort in being called, even by one we do not understand, in being summoned home across dark waters to a place that once cast us out. We too are drifting homeward now, toward the oldest home of all, the deep and graceless country of sleep, and we may answer that summons freely, and lay ourselves down and rest at last within it. Let us consider now the strange intermediaries of the divine, those trembling pale hands that speak for a distant god, and let us approach their mystery slowly, for it touches the deepest question of all, whether the messengers of heaven may be trusted, or whether they must be slain. Throughout the lands between the will of the greater will is conveyed by the two fingers great pale digits that twitch and gesture in the dark, interpreted by their attendant maidens, and it is through these fingers that gods are chosen and grace is bestowed, and the whole order of things is supposedly directed. Yet a terrible doubt coils around them, for the fingers are only messengers, translators of a will that dwells impossibly far away, and there is no certainty that they translate it truly. Perhaps the greater will has fallen silent. Perhaps it has abandoned the lands between entirely, and the fingers gesture on out of habit, misreading or inventing the commands of a god that no longer speaks. The maidens listen to the fingers, and the fingers listen to a silence, and the whole edifice of divine guidance may rest upon nothing but interpretation and hope. And so there arises the heresy of the finger-slayer, and the fearsome weapon called the finger-slayer blade, forged in ages past to strike down these very messengers, to sever the line between the world and its distant god. Rani herself seeks this blade, for her rebellion requires the slaying of her own two fingers, the killing of the intermediaries who would bind her to a destiny she refuses. To murder the fingers is to declare that the messenger has failed, that the message is corrupt, that a soul may cut the cord of grace and stand at last unmediated and alone. Consider the vertigo of that act, the sheer heresy of raising a blade against the hands of heaven itself, of deciding that the go-betweens of the divine are not sacred, but obstacles, not vessels of truth, but its distortion. It asks whether faith placed in intermediaries is faith at all, or merely obedience to whoever holds the ear of the silent God. And it leaves us with no firm ground, for if the fingers lie, then everything built upon their word, every grace and every crowning, stands upon a lie as well. Let us not seek to resolve so vast a doubt tonight, but let us take from it a single quieting thought as we drift, that between ourselves and the deepest truths there need be no anxious intermediary, no trembling hand to interpret what we may simply feel. In sleep we pass beyond all messengers, beyond all interpretation, into a communion that asks for no translation at all. Let the fingers gesture on in their distant dark. We need not heed them here. We slip past them, unmediated and unafraid, into the honest silence of rest. Let us return once more to Miquella, brightest and most sorrowful of Marika's children, for there is a secret woven into his story of a single substance in all the world that his overwhelming power cannot touch, and it is a mystery worth cradling softly as the night grows deep. Miquella was born with a charm beyond resisting, a compelling love that drew all souls toward him, a power so total that none who beheld him could refuse their devotion. And this gift, for all its beauty, was also a kind of curse, for love commanded is not love freely given. Yet against this irresistible charm there stands one lonely exception, a metal called unalloyed gold, pure and untainted by the influence of any outer god, and it alone possesses the power to resist Miquella's compulsion, to break the spell of his enchantment, to let a soul stand free before him and choose. From this rare substance is fashioned the needle of unalloyed gold, a slender and precious thing capable of warding off even the maddening influence of the outer gods, and it is whispered capable too of piercing the web of Miquella's own bewitching love. Consider the loneliness folded into that fact, for what does it mean to possess a love that none can refuse, save that one can never know whether one is truly loved at all? Every devotion offered to Miquella is suspect, compelled, drawn out by his charm rather than freely bestowed, and so the brightest and most beloved of the Empyreans may be in truth the most alone, surrounded by an adoration he can never trust. The unalloyed gold, the one thing that resists him, is perhaps the only path by which he might ever be loved for himself, by a will he has not bent, and there is a deep ache in the thought that a being of such power should long secretly for the very resistance that his gift denies him, that the needle which pierces his charm might be, in some hidden chamber of his heart, a thing he yearns for as much as fears. To be refused, to be doubted, to be met by a soul that is free to turn away. This is the strange and precious gift that only the unalloyed gold can offer him, and it is a gift he can never simply take. Let us hold that tender paradox as we sink towards sleep, that the most irresistible love may be the most solitary, and that freedom, the freedom to choose or to refuse, is what gives any devotion its worth. There is a quiet mercy in being no one's compelled thing tonight, in drifting toward rest by our own soft choosing, unbewitched and unbound. Let Miquella keep his lonely charm and his single needle of pure gold. We give our sleep to no one's compulsion, only to the gentle pull of our own weary peace, and we let it carry us freely down. Let us drift now towards the very edge of the known world, toward a place hidden behind a veil of fog, a realm deliberately erased, and let us approach it slowly, for there is a particular eeriness to a country that someone has taken great pains to make us forget. Beyond the borders of the lands between, wrapped in a concealing mist and severed from all our maps, there lies a place called the Land of Shadow, a realm cloaked and buried, kept from memory not by accident, but by design, as though its very existence were a wound that the Golden Order wished to close over and never see again. To reach it, one must follow the beckoning of Miquella, must grasp a withered arm reaching from a great cocoon at the foot of a monstrous dragon, and be drawn across the threshold into this shadowed country, and at once we sense that we have entered a place out of time, a land of ash and twilight, where the events that shaped the whole world were quietly buried. For it is here we come to understand that the deeds too terrible or too shameful for the golden histories were done, the acts that the Erdtree's chroniclers scrubbed away so that the age of gold might appear unstained. And the mystery that hangs over this realm is the mystery of concealment itself, the question of what an order must hide in order to call itself just. A land removed from every map, a history sealed behind fog, tells us that the Golden Order was not born innocent, that its radiance was purchased by hiding something in the dark, and that to walk into the Land of Shadow is to walk backward into the buried origins of everything, into the truths that grace was built to conceal. There is something in that erasure that unsettles the soul, and stirs it both. The sense of a whole country of the forgotten, of deeds and souls and sorrows, deliberately unremembered, waiting in the twilight for someone to cross the fog and know them again. What was done here that could not be allowed into the light? What shame was so great that an entire realm had to be cut away and hidden, that the very memory of it had to be dissolved? The shadow keeps its secrets and yields them only slowly, and never all at once. Let us hold the strangeness of that hidden land as we ourselves drift past the edges of the waking world into our own soft country of fog and shadow, where the day's sharp memories begin to blur and dissolve. There is a gentleness in forgetting when it is chosen and not imposed, a mercy in letting the harder things of the day slip quietly behind a veil. We cross now into our own land beyond the map, where nothing is required to be remembered, and we let the fog close softly behind us, and we rest in the twilight, unmapped and unknown and at peace. Within that shadowed realm there dwells a figure of hidden fire, a son concealed and abandoned, and let us draw near to his story slowly, for it is a tale of a flame that had to be buried, and of a child whom his own divine mother could not bear to keep in the light. His name is Mesmer, called the Impaler, a red-haired warrior with a serpent coiled where one eye should be, and he was sent long ago into the land of shadow at the head of a great and terrible crusade, dispatched to that hidden country and, it seems, quietly forgotten by the golden world that bore him. For Mesmer carries within him a fire that the Erd-tree could not abide, a flame of a different and dangerous kind, sealed away, hidden even from himself, a power so contrary to the golden order that his very being had to be concealed. He is a son of Marika, and yet he was not woven into the shining tapestry of her legacy, not celebrated among the demigods of the Shattering, but sent away into shadow with his abhorrent fire locked deep inside him, a child of the god who nonetheless could not be shown to the world. And so the ache at the heart of his story is the ache of the hidden child, the one who is loved perhaps, and yet cannot be kept, the son whose nature is so troubling to the order of things that he must be sealed away where the golden histories will not have to account for him. He wages his crusade in the twilight, faithful in his terrible way to a mother who cast him into the dark, bearing a flame he was commanded to suppress, an exile who may never have understood the full reason for his exile. There is a grief in that abandonment that touches something old and tender in us, the fear of being the one who does not fit, the one whose truest fire must be hidden away, lest it trouble those we long to please. Mesmer's sealed flame is the flame of every disowned thing, every part of a self that the world declares too dangerous or too shameful to be shown, banished into shadow and told to burn quietly, alone. And whether he rages against that fate or submits to it, he remains a son whom the Erd-tree tried to forget and could not entirely erase. Let us hold the hidden sun gently as the night folds fully around us, this impaler with his sealed and sorrowful fire, exiled into the twilight by the very love that made him. There is a quiet permission in his story, a reminder that even the fire we are told to hide is still ours, still part of us, still worthy of its rest. We need suppress nothing here in the dark. We may let every hidden thing within us soften and grow warm and settle. Let the forgotten sun keep his flame in the shadow. We carry ours gently down into sleep. We come now to the deepest root of the whole vast mystery, to the question of how a god is made at all, and let us approach it slowly, tenderly, for it is among the final riddles of the night, and it deserves our softest attention. Throughout the long tragedy of the lands between there recurs a rare and fateful word, the Empyrean, a being chosen from among the divine as a candidate to become the next god, to inherit the throne of order and remake the world in a new age, and only a precious few are ever marked with this terrible eligibility. And there is a curious law woven through this choosing, for the Empyreans, we are told, are born of goddesses, of a mother's line, souls descended through the feminine channel of divinity, so that Marika herself, and Rani, and Miquella, and millennia share this sacred and burdensome inheritance. A new god, it seems, must come from a woman's line, must be born through that ancient current of the mother, as though godhood itself passes not through power or conquest, but through the deep and patient lineage of those who bear and birth and nurture the divine. Each Empyrean is granted a shadow, a bound companion of the darkness, and set as a vessel awaiting the choice of the fingers, awaiting the moment when one among them might be lifted into godhood and the rest cast aside or ruined. It is an inheritance heavy with sorrow, for to be an Empyrean is to be a candidate for a throne that only one can hold, to carry within oneself the possibility of remaking all existence and the near certainty of being passed over, broken or bent by the distant will that does the choosing. And the mystery that lingers longest is the mystery of why it must be so, why the world must forever be remade rather than simply allowed to rest, why a new god must always be born to inherit the old god's broken law. Perhaps there is a wisdom in it, that renewal must come through the mother's line, through birth rather than conquest, that even the gods must be born of something older and deeper than themselves. Or perhaps it is only another turning of an endless wheel, one vessel emptied so that another may be filled forever. Let us lay that riddle down now, gently, as we have laid down the whole long procession of mysteries we have wandered among tonight. The sleeping god and the cold stars, the loyal wolf and the silent sage, the hidden sun and the chosen vessels. We need not choose among them, nor solve them, nor carry them any further. They will keep, unresolved and beautiful, in the twilight of the lands between, waiting for another night. Before we let the last of our wandering settle, let us drift eastward into the rot-red skies of Caelid and rest a while beneath the strangest feat of strength in all the lands between, the deed of star-scourge Radan, the red-maned lion of a demigod who conquered not an army, not a fortress, but the very stars themselves. For Radan mastered a gravity so vast that he could halt the wheeling heavens, and with that power he seized the stars in their courses and held them fast, frozen forever above the world. But why would a warrior turn his whole tremendous strength against the sky? Here the mystery gathers close and sorrowful. When Radan arrested the stars, he arrested fate itself, for the movement of the heavens is bound to the destinies of the Carian house, to Rani and her age of stars, and by freezing the sky, Radan locked his sister's future in place, whether by design or by the blind reflex of his power we cannot say. Some believe he did it to protect the world from Rani's cold new order. Some believe it was never his intent at all, only the vast and clumsy consequence of a strength too great to wield gently. The law leaves the reason drifting, unfixed, like the stars he could not quite let go. And there is a deeper grief folded into his glory, for the mighty Radan did not remain the conqueror we imagine. The scarlet rot took him, that same decaying divinity that festered in Melania after their unseen duel upon the Caelid plains, and it hollowed his great mind until only the warrior's instinct remained, a hero reduced to a raving thing that gnaws upon the fallen beneath a rotten sky. He clings to his gravity still, holding the stars in place even in his ruin, faithful to a purpose he can no longer remember, too proud or too broken to release the heavens and let fate move again. Perhaps this is the truest image of the whole doomed world, a titan of impossible power, chaining the sky against the turning of destiny, rotting slowly beneath the very stars he refuses to free. To defeat him is not triumph but mercy, a release for him and a release for the frozen heavens, and when he falls, the stars begin at last to move once more, and Rani's long night may finally begin to fall. We hold him gently as sleep draws near, this lion who wrestled the firmament and lost himself in the holding, and we wonder what it costs to grip a thing so tightly that one forgets why one ever reached for it at all. Thank you for drifting slowly through the timeline with me. If you've made it this far, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from and which mystery stayed with you longest into the dark. Hit that button for more deep dives into the lore that haunts the quiet hours. The ring is shattered still. The gods keep their silences. The riddles remain, and perhaps they were always meant to. Good night. Rest well, and remember that some questions are not wounds to be closed, but gardens to be wandered, that the not knowing can be a gentler companion than any answer, and that the lands between will hold its secrets patiently until we return. This has been a drift through Elden Ring's most tantalizing unsolved mysteries. Thank you for listening. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and never forget that some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed again. The story may be over, but its echoes will whisper in the quiet hours for generations to come.